Hi, I'm Tyson.
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
And we're the Gamesmiths, and we just got done playing the great Nameless. And we want to talk to you a little bit about our experience with it. Ryan's going to go ahead and kick us off with some of his thoughts.
Yeah. So first of all, it was a lot of fun. I love the layout that you got here. It works really well. Your whole board and everything like that. I think everything works really well. It's a little bit of a shame it didn't quite work for our goofy little setup here. But I mean, it worked well enough. We played the game, and I don't think it was a problem for anybody. We just lost this kind of zazz that would have been nice. I think it was real solid. I liked that all the factions were definitely different. They definitely have different win conditions, and they all played very differently, which was fun. I think everything worked pretty well. Everything moved along pretty well. And there's definitely, as I was seeing the game, or as I was going through the game, I was seeing more things, seeing more opportunities and plays, and like, oh, I didn't really figure out what the point of this one was, and I drew some other cards. I'm like, oh, now I get it. And more towards the end, so it was fun, and there was stuff that I was learning, and I felt that there was a depth to strategy, and there was definitely things I'd do differently if I played a second time, even with the same faction, or playing with a different, realm or faction or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was good. I think we probably should have tried to fight each other a little more and move into each other's realms a little more than we did. But overall it was good, and just from an initial play experience, it was, a little intimidating. Like, I knew I wasn't getting everything that was going on, and I knew I wasn't playing optimally, but I was still having fun and still kind of going through and learning, and would definitely want to do another playthrough of it, and would definitely be excited to play it again.
Yeah, it was really
fun. And try and figure out, either with a different deck or my own deck. Honestly, I'd like to just go again where everybody has the same decks and just say, okay, now I know what you're doing, I know what I'm doing a little bit more. So yeah, I think that that was a lot of fun. The rule book worked out really well. A couple things, I know that we reached out to you because we were confused about one rule, and it was in the rule book. You did a pretty good job of kind of like bolding the things that are really important. Two things I would bold that you didn't was, one, the thing that confused us about being able to do the actions inside a phase in any order. So you can choose the order of the bullet points, meaning you can move and place a seal, or then, place a seal after movement's done, or seal before you move, however you wanted to do it.
Or even how these cards come out of the deck. I'm gonna
march.
Then
right.
I'm gonna...
And so I would bold that. And then one thing that you didn't bold, but I did catch, was the Doom tokens give +1 damage to all of the minions, the Zexual controlled minions. Yeah. So in that case,
entities.
The entities. So that we caught, but I feel that could have been something that could have been misreading the rules. Like, it's all in there, but there are those things that you need to highlight so players see, and I feel that's a real critical part of the game. I just bold it. It's all in there. I would just do a little better job of drawing the player's eye to those two rules in specific.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it all worked out pretty well. The one thing that we did have confusion on is when I took control of somebody else's entity and marched it into combat, but then I lost it before combat. Does that combat still happen on my turn in between the two players? So if I were, for example, take one of Adam's units and bring it next to Colin, would they fight on my turn? Would they fight on Adam's turn? Would they fight on Colin's turn? That didn't really make sense. The other thing that didn't make sense is I had a few cards that would let me take control of the Zexual entities, and that was confusing because I didn't understand, do they march still? Do I get to move them? Do they have any movement value? Do they move on my turn instead of on the march phase if I control them? Because I had cards that would let me permanently take over a minion or an evil entity, essentially, but I had no clue what I could do with it. Can I move it? Can I make it attack other people? Does it attack on my turn? Does it still attack? Does it still march? Like, really confusing as to what to do when I took over one of those entities. So I just never did it. And that could have been something crucial to my strategy, but I didn't know why. It never seemed like a good idea to play an event card to take control of one of those, because I had no idea what I could do with it, or what would happen with it, or what the rules were for me playing with one of those things. So that was really confusing from my standpoint. And then also, like I said, the fact that I took over creatures, but what I wanted to do was like, oh, I'm going to take your creature and go fight and kill this thing, and then you're going to have damage on you, and I'm going to get the points for killing that thing, but it didn't work that way. So yeah, that all of that was kind of confusing to me. Other than that, I just didn't care for the term persistence. It means artifacts or entities, and I personally would just spell it out like that. It was a little confusing as to what's a persistent, but I don't know. Your call. It does work, but it just seems like a clumsy word choice personally. Other than that, I think it's pretty solid. I see a high replay value for sure. Definitely want to come back, try the different decks, try the different things.
Yeah.
Clearly seems like room for expansion, which I would be interested in. I'd also be interested in being able to make
the
my
last
own
two,
deck. Yeah.
the last two realms.
The last, yeah, 2 realms. So we have room for them there. And then I would also be interested in maybe being able to build my own deck. I don't know, that there's clearly balancing issues there, but if everybody's building their own deck, then building a deck becomes part of it. And so I don't know if that's what you want, or if you want to introduce that to this game in kind of a net runner thing where you released, sealed sets of cards, but then allow people to mix and match cards inside there. And there's nothing stopping us from doing it. But yeah, I'd maybe look at that. But other than that, I think you have a solid game. I don't know if you guys have some thoughts.
Overall, I thought it was really fun. It feels... we have a hard time speaking to the balance a little bit because we've played one game. You've obviously played many games. I think when we first started the game, we thought it was all about seals. Obviously, there was a win condition that included points, but I think we were all trying to look for seals because, to me, thematically, that's more a part of the game. And then to come to find out near the end of the game that Ryan doesn't even have the potential to get a seal.
Right.
And
unless you stole it from someone else.
Right. And I didn't read through my whole
means.
deck, but I only had one opportunity when my avatar entered the game to get a seal, and that's only if I had an artifact in my hand at the time. And so I was able to get one seal, but that was it. And then I see Colin within the first 2 or 3 rounds, and he's already got 3 or 4 seals, and I'm thinking, this game's going to be over, and I don't know how to get a seal. So at the start, I thought it was all about the seals. We ended up reading the book, or maybe Tyson read it at the start.
Yeah, he was reading through the book kind of initially, but he didn't really get into the strategies. So I think
that threw us off, and we didn't quite know if it was balanced right. But then once we realized each one had a strategy, and we could read what you had written there, and I think that made us all really want to play again. Because
so maybe highlight this in the rules too, like make sure you read this before you play, because it's very important to know how each realm plays.
Would strongly recommend that, because I would.
Or just put it in the rule book,
right
to the end.
For your first time playing, take a minute to get familiar with your deck and read this little strategy blurb, because or put those little strategy blurbs in the deck, in the instruction booklet, and then refer.
Or you could even put them on the
Yeah.
cards themselves, because there's plenty of art room that you have here that is kind of blank space. It doesn't add much to the game, and it would be cool to have.
I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree to that. I would not fill I think these are gorgeous. They add a lot to the game, and filling these up with text would lose a lot of the atmosphere.
You could even just make another card.
You can just put it over the pictures.
No, and I know. I disagree. I understand what you're saying. I strongly disagree with
You could flip it over onto the back.
Yeah,
it's fine. He has it written down. It's just draw people's attention to it. It doesn't need to be on the board to be constantly read.
Valid point that it's part of the really big draw to this game, at least for me. One of my favorite things I think about it was the thematic tie-in. I think that it felt thematic to me. I had a lot of good experience that I felt like I was this individual realm or entity, and I felt like it was really exciting to be able to be like, oh, I have these specialties, I have these abilities, and I can work in this specific way. And to have a little bit of the lore background to understand the kind of whole concept of it, specifically with the Zeptrum and the generations and their evolution. And it's pretty interesting to see how it works in. And I liked a lot the Primo Regni and having that kind of father-like figure, almost as if it were like that kind of Greek mythology kind of lore feel to it in
like
some
the Titans
senses.
Versus
versus
the gods. Yeah, I had that same kind
you
of
had
feel. Like this is the Titan that they banished,
and so it feels really exciting to play like that. And I think that you had a lot of really interesting things. I think that you've done well with the overall visual and graphic design to help understand that type of things. There's a couple of things that, as were mentioned, just to clarify. Accent like the turn order card and things like that, kind of just those bolding things and things that could help. But overall, this is clear to me that this is a complete product and that you've got a game here that works and it's efficient and you've spent a lot of time on it. And we can see that there is a lot of intention within each of these cards and how they interact with one another. I was so impressed to see the synergy between cards and see that, oh, I see those strategies now as I get more familiarized with my deck. And that was really entertaining to me to be able to feel that, which led to Ryan's point of I wanted to go and play with the other decks as well to be able to get that feeling and see, okay, so I understand these strategies a little bit and I understand the synergy of those cards. Now I want to check it out in the other ones. So I'm very overall impressed with the synergy of the cards in the game and the whole package. I think you've done a great job overall with it.
And I think our only other complaint that we had was it was a little difficult to interact with the avatars.
Yeah.
We felt that it was far easier for Adam and the La Sardania, or I can't read it sideways here. But it was a lot easier, for his avatar could interact with the other avatars on the table remotely, where the rest of them couldn't. You know, every card in my deck pretty much said you can do anything to anyone except an avatar. And,
it felt like, especially with your deck, that it should have been able to deal with avatars since you were kind of at disadvantage.
Yeah, even do something, displace them, do anything to them.
Yeah, I would have liked that too. I was a little frustrated seeing Adam with this huge guy that was like, well, what do we do about this?
It's essentially untouchable.
He's just going to eat all these entities, get all these points, because that's how he was going to win, was getting all the points because he wasn't getting seals. And I was like, well... I could see a lot of defense in my deck specifically, like a lot of ways to make people not go, if they go to your realm, put them on the bottom of their deck, or there's a lot of defense. So I could see how maybe Adam and Ryan's decks were supposed to try to stop me from doing things. I did like my deck a lot, but just the lack of being able to deal with avatars was a problem, because it just took me out of the game once I got ganged up on. But I liked it. It got me passionate. I felt engaged the entire game. It was pretty long, but it was pretty fun, and I was glad to see that there were so many different ways to win. I thought that maybe my bonus on the array was a little underpowered. There weren't a lot of ways to get a lot of persistent cards onto my field. And so the extra points from there were kind of irrelevant. But other than that, I thought the deck was really great. It played very synergistically, and
but again, to Adam's point, I wanted to go back and say that with one play of this game, I don't know that we can speak to all the balance issues.
Speak to balance.
You are the expert in that, obviously, but it's from a first
feel bad.
Yeah, a first impression kind of a thing that you're like, oh, yeah. So it depends. I think that I see this as a game that essentially, the more you play it, it's not a gateway game by any means. It's not the kind of game that you'd set up with somebody who just learned how to play Catan, right? It's the game that you want to bring, and you want your gaming group to get more and more involved in. It's the game you want to repeatedly come back to because it has that depth of strategy and tactics, and it has that depth of theme that enables you to really integrate yourself into the world that you've created here. And I think that's where this game shines. But perhaps to Ryan and Colin's point here, there are some things you could do in the rule books to highlight and make sure that people are aware at first impression that there may be some balancing issues, such as even highlighting the tips and the strategies, giving people some way to know how your faction operates and how to make sure that you're operating it efficiently. Because that whole thing, I could easily see.
I would see reading that book as an essential part
I would
of
even
the
make
rules for your strategy.
my strategy one of these cards that comes out, like a Joker comes out of a playing card. Like you see it, and it's obviously, this does not go into my deck. And it comes out, and I can actually read my strategy. Then I'm not going to miss it.
I did really like this, too. It was good to refer back to.
But I would just put in the rules, if this is your first time playing, take a minute, look at your cards, figure out your strategy, and read this summary. Because just as a person who plays games like this, you don't generally want to spend a whole bunch of time reading the cards ahead of time. It just kind of adds length to the whole process. Like, okay, we're all going to sit and read our decks for 20 minutes before we start. But I look at this board, I look at, okay, seal here, seal here, seal here. I read all these rules about seals. I figure I should be gathering seals on some level. And for the longest time, my strategy was, okay, I can take control of enemy entities and other people's entities and stuff like that. I want to get a seal or two, then take control of an entity on the far side of the board and throw down a seal that'll mess someone up. That was my initial strategy, looking at all of my things that I can do, not knowing I was never going to be able to get a seal the whole game. And so, like...
Well, and the end game objectives essentially highlight there are these different ways to win, but it's not clear.
2/3 of them are seal related.
It's not. It's clear that it's not clear to me that it's like these are the end game things because each type of faction can win in different ways. It's not that one faction can usually win in all of these types of ways. You have a strength at which end game method you're working towards. So having that, I think, in some accessible way up front, whether it's a card or whether it's a reference thing on your board or whatever you want to do, can be very helpful with first-time players, especially if you're coming to a group that has experienced players and you're the one first-time player, because that's going to be exacerbating that feel bad moment that oh, I don't get this game at all and I'm just getting decimated and there's no chance I have. So
for sure.
So I think despite all that, the overall impression that I have with this game is excellent job.
It was really
well
good.
done.
Very fun.
Yeah, I think overall we all very much enjoyed the game. Maybe do a little more to bring attention to some certain aspects of it, certain rules, like we said, and just maybe suggest new players take a minute to review their decks and their strategies before they start. And maybe consider a little more interaction with the avatars. Other than that, I think you have a really great game. We all do, and good luck and keep up the good work.